Before I get into today's episode, just to remind everyone, if you've been listening to the Podiatry Legends podcast for some time now and you've been enjoying it, please consider leaving a rating review if you haven't done so already. It really does help the show out, and it also lets the podcast platforms know that they should be recommending this show to other people. So if you haven't done it before, please leave a rating review. I would really, really appreciate it. Okay, let's get on to today's episode. Hi, I'm Tyson Franklin, and welcome to this week's episode of the Podiatry Legends Podcast. With me today is Dr. Patrick DeHeer, DPM from Indianapolis, Indiana. Now, if you recognize the name, because it wasn't that many episodes ago, episode 373, when Patrick was on here with Ben Pearl and Patrick Agnew, we were talking about podiatry student recruitment, research, and unity. So if you missed that episode, you need to go back and listen to it. But I picked up pretty early when I was talking to Patrick that he's had a pretty amazing podiatry career, which is why I wanted to get him back on the podcast. And when I looked through his bio and I saw how much you have actually done, I started to question, how many podiatry lifetimes have you actually had? Because it is, I'm looking through your bio and I've gone, where did you find the time to do all this? It's amazing.
Thank you. I get asked that question a lot, but I think it's just, I really love what I do and I have a hard time saying no.
It has to be, because I picked that up when did the other episode, and you said that towards the end. You said, I just love being a podiatrist. Mm-hmm. And it was actually refreshing to hear someone say that, especially because how many years have you been a podiatrist for now?
So I graduated from podiatry school at the Scholl College in 1990. I did a one-year residency back then. I'm from Indiana. I wanted to come back. All the residencies in Indiana were just 1 year. And then I did a fellowship which there weren't even fellowships after at that point, but I did a fellowship for a year after that. So I had 2 years of training. And so I've been in practice for 33 years in total.
Okay. I've got to ask a question. Why podiatry? How did you get into podiatry in the first place?
Yeah, it's interesting. I went to Indiana University and I went to school as a pre-dental major, and I was going to be a dentist. And somewhere in my second year, I visited my dentist and I realized that was not a good choice. And there were several things that didn't resonate with me. And at that point, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. So I was considering marine biology and some other things. And my counselor at IU actually recommended podiatry, and I didn't know anything about it. And I was talking on the phone with my dad, who played golf with a podiatrist. And he said, well, I know Dr. Ralph Gibney, and I'm sure you could visit him. And I did. And he loved his job. His patients loved him. He did surgery, had a normal lifestyle. I saw patients leave his office happy, like immediately feeling better. Yeah. He was very successful, just kind and generous. And I was like, I could do that. That looks like a great career. And I think being really involved with student recruitment, the secret sauce for sure is when a prospective student visits a podiatrist, just like my experience was so many years ago, they see people who are happy, who love what they do, whose patients appreciate them, who they can help immediately feel better. And then you have the whole gamut of things you can do within podiatry, from diabetic limb salvage to sports medicine to pediatrics to total ankle replacements. So it really gives you a wide range of subspecialties within the profession.
So you said you went to Indiana University, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Did you play basketball there as well?
I didn't. My dad did. My dad was a very well-known basketball player. I love basketball, and I'm 6'5", but he was 6'10", and I'm not as athletic as he was. But I love basketball. Basketball's been a big part of my life, and that's one of the reasons I was really excited to work with the Indiana Pacers, which I was their team podiatrist for 30 years.
I saw that. So you finished in 1990, and from 92 to 2022. You were the podiatrist for the Indiana Pacers.
Yes.
How did you score that gig?
Well, there's a couple things that happened that led to that. One, my mentor was Rick Lundeen, who was a really big name in podiatry at that point in time, nationally and internationally for that fact. He brought arthroscopy into podiatry. He was doing it unofficially. And then my dad, like I mentioned, was a big-time basketball player. He was actually drafted by the Indiana Pacers in the late 1960s.
All right.
Nine. And so they knew the name and they worked with Rick Lundeen and they wanted somebody in more of an official capacity than he had been doing it. And I was in the right place at the right time. And I got along really well with the trainer, David Craig. And it just was a great relationship for 30 years.
And I take it you still go to the games?
Occasionally, so they made a change on the orthopedic whole team back in 2022, and they're like, "Well, we're going to change everything." And I was like, "Okay, that's fine. I've done it for 30 years. That was enough." And they had a really nice on the court celebration for me where they recognized me before a game and gave me. I have a couple different jerseys that they've given me, but they gave me one with the number 30 on it to celebrate my 30 years.
Oh, that's
And
cool.
yeah, it was really cool. And it was really fun working with professional athletes. There's a whole sort of nuance to that a lot of people unfortunately don't get to experience, but it can be challenging. It can be very hectic at times. There can be a lot of pressure involved with it also, but it's also incredibly rewarding.
So, as the podiatrist for like a basketball team at that level, what was it? Was it a daily contact you had with them, or was it something once a week you caught up with the players, or they only came into your clinic when there was an issue?
More the latter, I would say, but I usually would see them at the beginning of the season, help with their orthotic prescriptions and evaluate them, and then as needed. Oftentimes, the trainer would call me and ask me to either come to a game or a practice, and then occasionally the players would need something more urgent, and they would come to my office. But it varied from year to year quite a bit on how much I did, on just based on how much they needed me.
Did you go along to the games when you were the team podiatrist at the time?
Yeah, not all of them, but definitely some of them. And the Pacers are such a great organization. They actually had every medical specialty as part of their healthcare team, and including like pediatrics for the players' kids. And so at the beginning of every year, they would have a sort of a team doctor reception dinner. And then they'd have a lottery for tickets for us for the games. And they would have usually the general manager there and the coach and a player or two. And we got to interact with them and talk with them and hang out with them. It was just always really fun. And the Pacers are just a first class organization and they were great to work with.
What made you decide it was time to hang up the boots and not do that?
Honestly, it wasn't my decision. It was theirs. They were changing the whole orthopedic team. And yeah, and that happens in sports and especially at high levels like that. And initially I was a little bit caught off guard. I can't lie about that. But once I came to terms, like I've done this for a long time, it's okay.
Yeah, I know because we have the Cairns Taipans where I live in the National Basketball League. And it was interesting when they first kicked off 20 something years ago. I was a podiatrist for the team, did that first 2 years. Then all of a sudden there was a change of coach and they dropped us and just went with another podiatrist. And we went, well, what the? And we're talking to the team doctor going, what happened there? He goes, oh, I had no control over it. This person knew this person and they've made that decision. I went, oh, okay. Anyway, it only lasted about 5 months, I think, with the other person. The next minute, the coaches ring up saying, please, we need you to come back. And I'm like, no, I don't want to do it now. And they're going, please. So we did. And we did it for the next 15 years. It was a long period of time. But we had a really good arrangement with them. Same thing, doing screenings at the beginning of the year. And we ended up having like a corporate box at the game. So we were at every home game. And we did a bit of a deal with them to actually get that, which would be a lot cheaper in the NBL than in the NBA.
I bet, yeah.
their budget would be a lot smaller too in the NBL over here than the NBA. It's crazy sports money over there.
Yes, it is.
Had you worked with other sporting teams as well, or basketball was the main sport you were involved in?
Basketball, I worked with the women's. We have a WNBA team also. So I worked with them for a few years, not nearly as long as the Pacers, but I worked with them. And then we have a college in Indianapolis called Butler University. I worked with them for a few years, but it was, again, the basketball team. But I will say, because of working with professional athletes, I do tend to get athletes from all different types of sports coming to my private office, but no official capacity with another team.
So with your career, after you graduated and then you did your residency, which was 1 year back when you did it, and you decided you were going to stay in Indiana, what was the next stage of your career?
I've had an interesting employment history. Went to work for a large group where Rick Lundeen, who was my mentor, was one of the owners. And then he left the group after about 3 years and then went to work for a hospital. So then I followed him and went to work for a hospital for a few years. And then we formed a multi-specialty group. Then I worked in that for a few years, and I was like, I think I can do better on my own. So then I was out in private practice by myself for several years. And then about 4.5 years ago or so, the private equity involvement in medicine in the United States has really taken off, and it started in other specialties in medicine, but it was happening in podiatry then, and still is for that matter. And I was approached by 3 or 4 different private equity firms that wanted to buy my practice and have me be involved with their company. And I sold my practice to Upperline Health back then, and I've been part of that group since.
With that transition into private practice, did your practice cover all aspects of podiatry, or did you specialize in a particular area?
I've done everything, and I really enjoy all components of podiatry. The things that I'm probably most known for, I'm a big reconstructive surgeon, so I do a lot of reconstructive surgery, and I do a lot of pediatrics. Those are probably the 2 biggest things that I'm most known for. I'm also a residency director at Ascension St. Vincent's, Indianapolis, but I've worked with residents my whole career. I've been a residency director for about 6 or 7 years now. But I've enjoyed teaching residents for 33 years, basically.
And also you go to Haiti and do reconstructive surgery there.
So international medicine has been a big part of my career. I've been on 30 trips total around the world. I've been to several countries. The first one was in 2002. I went to Honduras. One of my former residents that I became really close to, he was practicing in Little Rock, Arkansas, in a large group. There asked him to go with them, and he asked me if I would join him. And so we went to Trujillo, which is on the eastern coast of Honduras. And that was in 2002. It was a really kind of small hospital. There was about 100 people in the group that went there, not all medical, but most medical. We would actually take over the whole hospital. And it was something that just like, I just knew that was like me. Like that was I just loved it so much. And I had such an amazing experience that I went back there twice. And the third time I went, I actually brought my daughter, who's my oldest child. She was in high school at the time. And watching her go through that experience was probably one of my most favorite international trips. She worked in the eye clinic, and just see her experience in doing international medicine was really rewarding. Then I wanted to start to go to some other places. And then I stumbled on Haiti, and I really got involved with Haiti. I've been there by far the most, and started working in Haiti, primarily doing clubfoot. And in Haiti, I met Kay Wilkins, who was a pediatric orthopedic surgeon from Texas, San Antonio. We started working together on the Haitian Clubfoot Project. I also, through my experience in Haiti, my first trip with one particular young man who I did surgery on, who had a really difficult postoperative course. He was about a 13 or 12-year-old boy who I did clubfoot surgery on. And after that first trip, when I came back home about a week later, I called down to the orthopedic surgeon who was covering our cases and taking care of the patients postoperatively. And we did several cases. I had my good friend Mike Baker, who's a podiatry residency director in Indianapolis also. And then we had an anesthesiologist from the hospital, and Steve Offit, who's a podiatrist, who was a resident at the time. We went down together. So I called and asked how everybody was doing. We did maybe 30 surgeries or something. And they said, everybody's fine except for the kid. He had a really bad wound dehiscence and infection. We're going to have to amputate his leg. And I said, well, how long can you wait? And they said they could maybe wait a week or so. And this young man, his name was Wilkin, he lived in the middle of Haiti, and he had no paperwork, nothing. I was fortunate. I was in a fraternity in a university, and 2 of my fraternity brothers, their dad was our state senator, one of our state senators, and working through his office in the Haitian embassy in the U.S., we were able to get him a passport and visa within a week. There happened to be a group called the Timmy Foundation from Indianapolis and Port-au-Prince. They brought him up to Indianapolis. I got the hospital where I worked at that time to admit him, and I got a whole team of doctors involved, pediatricians, infectious disease, plastic surgeons, and we got his wound stabilized. Then one night, we were going to do this big, massive surgery on him, and I fixed his other foot, and then the plastic surgeons came in, and they did a rectus abdominis flap from his stomach and connected it to fill in. He had a big wound on his medial sort of heel area. And then they did a split thickness skin graft over that. And we had to wait until all the regular surgeries were done because everybody was doing it for free. And then he stayed in the hospital for about a month after that. And then there were some other people from a church who went with us too here. And one of them brought him into his home with his family, and they took care of him for about 3 months while he rehabbed. And he was on the news. The story was on the news in the newspaper. And then he became a little celebrity. And then some local people helped put him through a private school in Port-au-Prince. And he ended up healing both feet really well and moving on and living his life. And it was a long journey, but through that, I really thought there has to be a better way of dealing with clubfoot. So I started going to the University of Iowa and met Dr. Ponsetti. And I went out there several times and I got to know Dr. Ponsetti pretty well. And I just loved working with him and learning from him. He was the most kind, gentle man I've ever met in my life. He was in his like 92, 93, somewhere early 90s
Oh,
at that
right.
time, seeing patients. And a quick story, one of the most surreal nights of my life. The last time I was there, he invited me to his house for dinner, and his wife was equally famous in her profession. They were from Spain, and she was a Spanish literature teacher, a professor. And so I go to their house, and I'm having beer and pizza with these two 90-year-olds who are incredibly famous in their respective professions. And I was just like, I cannot believe this. And then he asked me if I wanted to go up to his office and look at his original Degas paintings. I'm like, yes, let's go do that. I mean, I still kind of get goosebumps thinking about that because he is the biggest name in pediatric orthopedics. And being able to learn from him and spend as much time as I did with him was really influential in my career.
And to still be performing at that age is
Yeah.
incredible. That is incredible.
His hands were arthritic at that point, but they were almost in the shape of the way he would mold the clubfoot cast on children,
Yeah.
because he had. The thing I loved about him is he started his technique in the 50s and everybody thought he was crazy and nobody understood it. And he just kept putting out research and research. In the 60s, it was Kite's method. In the 70s, it was posterior medial release. In the 80s, everybody's like, we don't know what to do now because none of this stuff works. Maybe we should look at that guy in Iowa. And they started looking at his research. He just kept putting out research. And they're like, this may be the answer. And now it's the standard of care according to the World Health Organization. And his story is just really amazing. I have other colleagues here in the US who spent time with him, like Mitzi Williams, and learned from him. He didn't care about the initials after your name. If he wanted to help children and put in the effort to learn his technique, he wanted to teach you. And he was just such a kind, gentle man, like I mentioned before. I've never seen a 90-year-old man get kissed by so many women in my life. People would just be so, I mean, these moms would be just overwhelmed with their appreciation for him and what he did for so many kids.
So the young boy you were talking about before, who went through all that surgery and eventually you saved his limbs, did you ever catch up with him later years?
Yeah.
I thought now would be a perfect time just to jump in and remind everybody that if you need some assistance growing your podiatry business, please reach out to me. There will be a link in the show notes to this particular episode, or you can go to my website, TysonFranklin.com, click on the coaching section and just have a read through there. You'll find there's a link there that will take you through to my calendar where we can book a 30-minute call and we'll discuss what it is that you actually need. You might just want a little bit of career advice. And I do these calls week in, week out. I'm not trying to get anybody. I'm really here to help. But if long term you feel that I could help you grow your podiatry business, by all means, we can talk about that in more detail. Okay, let's get back to this interview with Patrick.
I did. I went back several times to the school he was at. And then the earthquake happened in 2010, I think it was. I was signed up for this international mission board, and I got called about a week after the earthquake in Port-au-Prince. And they said, you have to be at the airport and you have to bring your own food, your own water and clothes. And we don't know how long you're going to be here. And so I had my family meet me at the airport and brought as much stuff as they could. And I flew from Indianapolis to Fort Lauderdale. And then I was in a small airport in Fort Lauderdale, and I got on a private plane with two NBA basketball players and a famous football player who were going down for the earthquake literally a week after. Desmond Howard, Alonzo Mourning, and Samuel Dalembert. And so we were on the same flight together and got into Port-au-Prince, and there was like a field hospital at the UN in a big tent. And I get there and they ask me what I do. And I say, I'm a podiatrist, foot and ankle surgeon. And they're like, what else can you do? And I'm like, I I go, I can do wound care. And they're like, okay, you're in charge of wound care for the whole hospital. And they're like, and these guys are going to help you. And they had these Portuguese EMS guys who were there. There were people from all over the world there helping. And everybody was staying in the airport property, which was adjacent to where the UN was. And they didn't speak any English. I didn't speak Portuguese. But we would every day go around and pre-medicate all the patients in the hospital because they had really then painful wounds, severe crush injuries, massive wounds all over. And then we'd go back through and I would do wound debridements and do their dressing changes. And these guys helped me. And we developed our own sort of way to communicate with each other. And I ended up being there for about 8 days and sleeping on a cot with no bathrooms available that we just had to make shift. And eventually they got things set up for all the volunteers. And then I went home. And through that, I met, and one of my other heroes in medicine was John McDonald. And he was down really the day after the earthquake from Florida. He was a retired cardiothoracic surgeon who got into wound care, and he set up the wound care clinic that I took over. And then after I got back, John asked me if I would work in the wound care clinic that he was starting in Port-au-Prince, and if I'd be in charge of the diabetic limb salvage part. And I said I would. So then I started working with him in Port-au-Prince at this Bernard Mevs Hospital wound care center.
So doing this overseas aid work, you must get a lot of enjoyment out of doing it.
I love it. I love it. It's not easy. My last trip last late fall was to the Philippines and I had some travel issues. My total travel time to get to Manila was about 32 hours or so. But it made it worth it. It was such a great experience.
Do you normally go with a team of podiatrists when you go and visit Haiti? Do you have a group of podiatrists you go down with?
It varies from trip to trip. The more recent trips I've been on to Kenya and to the Philippines, I've gone with Steps to Walk, which Mark Meyerson, who's a orthopedic foot and ankle surgeon I've gotten to know real well from lecturing together and teaching together. And he started this nonprofit, and I think there aren't many podiatrists that are involved with it. There are a few, but he and I have really bonded and gotten to know each other. And he asked me if I'd participate. And I really love how they set up their program because it's very much educational based. And one of the things I learned from Kay Wilkins, who I went to Haiti with, is it's more about teaching and sharing your knowledge and experience instead of just what I call parachute medicine, where you go in and you do 20 or 30 surgeries. It's really about teaching the teachers, especially if you can teach the teachers, then it's going to have a mushrooming effect. So you're going to help thousands of people instead of 10 or 20 people.
So you're teaching other surgeons down there how to perform these procedures the right way?
Yes. Well, it's not so much that. It's my experience in a lot of developing countries is, so for like reconstructive type stuff, it's going to be orthopedic surgeons. If it's more wound stuff, it'll be general surgeons. But they just don't get the specialized training that we have. And so that's one of the things that we can bring is we have this knowledge base that they just haven't been exposed to. They're great, like orthopedic surgeons and do a lot of trauma, for example, but they maybe don't do a lot of reconstructive flat foot surgery or sarco or something like that, where we can give them share our experience and knowledge. And with Steps to Walk, I really love it because there's usually 5 or so faculty, and it's mostly foot and ankle orthopedic surgeons and then myself and from all over the world. And the first day and it's all the orthopedic surgeons and residents from pretty much the whole country come in for this program. And so the first day, there's a conference where we as faculty present. The next day, they line up these patients for us to evaluate. So we evaluate them. They're actually interviewing us while we're evaluating. We're telling them what we think and what we would recommend. And then so that's on Tuesday, then Wednesday and Thursday, there are surgeries. And then Friday, it's either like a cadaver lab or a review of the surgeries. And it's just really great. For the surgeries, there's 2 faculty members. There's a lead surgeon and an assistant surgeon. And then usually 2 of the orthopedic residents are also in the case too. So there's usually 4 people on the case. It's really interesting since I have a strong background in pediatrics. This year, when we were in Manila, there were a lot of pediatric cases. More than half the cases were pediatrics. And the foot and ankle orthopedic surgeons really don't do a lot of pediatric stuff. Adults, usually it's the pediatric orthopedic surgeons who are doing the kids. And so they made me the lead surgeon on all those cases, which was really interesting.
So are they different groups and organizations reaching out to you, or are you searching for areas that you feel may need help?
When I first started, I was more me searching and trying to find opportunities. Now that my name is known, people will approach me. For example, I've been working with a colleague in Barbados. She graduated from podiatry school in England, and there are 7 podiatrists in Barbados who are all non-surgical. And the country actually has a really high amputation rate. And one of the things that they determined, despite everything else that they're doing to try to help reduce that amputation rate, they just needed surgical podiatry to be part of it. And we talked at one of the APMA national meetings a couple of years ago, and she asked me if I would come down to Barbados. And so I took 2 of my residents down about it. That was about a year and a half ago, and met with her and went to the hospital. And I was like, yeah, we could definitely help here. This things like if a patient has a bunion, a diabetic patient has a bunion, that nobody is fixing that then leads to an ulcer because it's such a bad bunion that could have been prevented. And the problem, and this is pretty common in a lot of countries, is they really don't recognize surgical podiatry from a credentialing standpoint. And so much so in countries like that were under the English system, they have to change the laws. So the government has to change the laws. And she's a force of nature. Simone McConney is her name. And she's been working with the government to try to give me an exemption so I can start coming down and demonstrating that we can influence the amputation rate and hopefully reduce that significantly.
On that first trip that you just did, was that more of a reconnaissance trip? It was more to go down there and evaluate the area and what is actually needed. You couldn't actually go down there and perform surgery.
Correct. We did see patients at a diabetic center and did some minor things like some tenotomies and things like that. But yeah, it's more about, and one of the things I've learned is, and people ask me about international medicine all the time, it's not going down and saying, here's what I can do. It's about going somewhere and saying, how can I help? What do you need? And then if you can help fulfill the need, then great. And it really, and especially if that can be centered around teaching the local doctors and working with them. And again, it's not that I know anything, that I'm a better surgeon than anybody there. It's just I have this really super subspecialized training that they haven't been exposed to, and then I can share that with them.
Yeah, I've had a few podiatrists on the podcast who have done some overseas work, and there was one Australian podiatrist, and he's been traveling through South America for the last couple of years, not doing surgery, but just making up inserts or whatever he can get his hands on and just doing general routine foot care on people and educating them about footwear and protecting their feet. And he's been doing it for a couple of years now and absolutely loves it.
I mean, I've made some maybe not the best decisions. Like I went to Iraq twice in the middle of the Gulf War, for example. Not the trip in the world, but and Haiti, I've been in Haiti at times when Haiti was in total civil unrest. But I love it so much that the risk is worth it for me to be able to make a difference in people's lives, but also to share the knowledge and experience that I have accumulated over my 35 years and to pay it forward.
So over this period of time, you've done a lot of work overseas, and you've been on a number of different boards and associations. How important is it for you to actually be involved in the profession in that way?
Well, when I finished my residency, I was at our state meeting and I was complaining about the quality of the meeting. And they're like, okay, that's fine. You can be on the CE committee now, the continuing education committee. And I'm like, okay, I'll do that, but don't ask me to get involved in politics because I'm never going to be doing that. I'm going to be more in the educational stuff. And look at me now, I'm president-elect of APMA, and I've had several board positions and I've been on a million committees. And once I got on the board for our state association and went through all those stages or positions on the state board, I really started to enjoy the leadership part of that. I like trying to help direct where the profession is going. And my whole thing is to leave it better than I found it. My father-in-law was also a podiatrist, and he passed away about a year and a half ago in his mid-80s. He worked in my office until he was like 82 or 83. And I love podiatry, but he really loved podiatry. And people like him, my mentor, Rick Lundeen, Teddy Clark, who was the president of APMA from Indiana. He was the first African American president of APMA. Earl Kaplan, Dalton McGlamory, who just recently passed away. All those people paved the way for us
Mm.
who are practicing now. And it's our responsibility to pave the way for those people following us and to continue to advance the profession. And I can really do that at a high level being involved in a national organization like APMA.
With the national boards in the United States, do you connect with associations in other countries a lot, or you don't have much to do with them?
Not a lot, somewhat, but I do think there's opportunity. It's been interesting to lecture internationally, like at the International Federation for Podiatrists meetings, the global health or the global podiatry meetings.
Yeah.
I'm going to be the keynote speaker next year for it. And seeing podiatry grow all throughout the world in the different stages that it's in different countries is really encouraging. But I think that we need to first work on the lexicon so everybody's using the same terminology, and then start to set some like qualifications to what those things mean. I really think they're the two terms that need to be used, especially on the international platform, are podiatrists and podiatric surgeons, because
Yeah.
they're totally different. And what the qualifications are for those, I have my own opinions about, but I think the standards need to be set, and then all the countries who want to see podiatry flourish within their country need to figure out a way to meet those standards that have been set.
Feel
And I
free to
think,
share your opinion. Tell us how you think it should be.
yeah, I mean, I think that to be a podiatrist, it should be a graduate degree, not an undergraduate degree. And then I think to be a podiatric surgeon, you should have a postgraduate medical educational experience, like a residency program. And I think those are the two qualifiers. I think board certification should be part of that too, to be a podiatric surgeon. But the word podology is used a lot. Chiropodist is still used in some places.
Yeah.
And some of them are just like almost a technical degree versus a graduate degree. So I think if everybody could start to agree on some standards and some terminology, then everybody can work towards a common goal and help each other.
Some part of that I agree, and other parts I can see how other people be going, oh, it's going to be so confusing to try and get it standardized everywhere.
Yeah.
It's even the UK system they've started introducing. If there's anyone from the UK listening to this, and if I'm wrong, please let me know. But they've introduced like apprenticeships where you don't have to be at the university for the whole 4 years. You can be doing a lot of your education in the clinic itself, and you go to university at different times, and they're calling it like an apprenticeship program, which is a completely different pathway again.
Right. And I think in Canada, it's more like an undergraduate degree too. I don't know remember the specifics, but I've lectured in Canada and I've talked to a lot of Canadian podiatrists over the years. But again, not a lot of Canadian podiatrists are doing surgery. Kind of varies from province to province.
Yeah, well, in Australia, we pretty much finish high school and it's an undergraduate degree. We just go straight in, do podiatry. 4 years later, you come out and you start working.
Yeah. And maybe that some sort of hybrid model of that would be great. I just think that it's an evolving profession, and it's such an impactful profession on the healthcare system for all these countries that can improve patients' quality of life, keep people walking, keep people active and healthy, dealing with problems like diabetes and obesity that are going to lead to foot problems, and reducing the complications associated with those systemic diseases can really impact the overall healthcare system for countries. So I think it's so important for podiatry to be part of that equation, but we need to establish what the standards are to really have an impact in those healthcare systems.
Yeah, and even if everybody got together, had a big meeting, and you all agreed, it would still be generations for it to roll out completely, because you'd have people that are just graduating now. So they've got a 30, 40-year career ahead of them.
For sure. And I think the US has set the standard. And I think that something along that line with Australia and England and what you've done, and Spain now too, looking at all those models and trying to find something that is everybody can say, okay, this is what it means to be a podiatrist, and this is what it means to be a podiatric surgeon. And then support the country's podiatric associations to try to work with their government to make that happen.
This is what I found interesting doing the podcast, and what I've enjoyed a lot is where I've had podiatrists from India,
Mhm.
from the UEA, from Mauritius, UK, Canada, South Africa, so many different parts of the world. And when you talk to them and you go through the processes everyone goes through, there's a lot of similarities between a lot of countries. And then America is on its own in the way that they actually do things.
For sure. I mentioned I graduated from podiatry school in 1990. To see the evolution of podiatry in the United States, even during my career, is really amazing. I'm really proud of where we've gotten to. We still have ways to go to really get to where the profession should be, but I'm really proud of the progress our profession has made during my career.
What would you say has been the biggest change you've seen over your 30 something years?
I really think that the diabetic limb salvage has integrated podiatry into hospital healthcare systems. And then that has expanded into things like trauma and to reconstructive surgery, even more so. I think like in the 1970s here in Indiana, there was only one hospital in the whole state that would let podiatrists operate in the hospital. And that was here in Indianapolis. And now to think that we can admit our own patients and do total ankle replacements or take trauma call, or I'm doing pediatric surgery, it's just amazing how far it's come. And to see that progress, I think a lot of it was led by the diabetic limb salvage component of the profession and integrating that. And that helped to integrate podiatry into just the healthcare system. And it became a key player in amputation prevention.
So there wasn't one significant moment in time where things changed. It was a progression over that period of time.
I think guys like Larry Harkless, David Armstrong, Larry Lavery, Robert Feikenberg, Lee Rogers, those people have really helped from a diabetic limb salvage part integrate the whole profession, I think.
I want to move ahead a little bit. You invented a thing called the Aquinas Brace.
Yeah. So I was running to try to lose weight and I got posterior tibial tendonitis and I didn't want to stop running and I was wearing orthotics. I was taking some steroid pills, but it still was really hurting. And so I realized I had Aquinas like everybody and I needed to stretch. So I was wearing a night splint at night to try to stretch out my calf. And I woke up at 2 a.m. because they're uncomfortable to sleep in. I look down, I'm sleeping on my side with my knee bent. And I'm like, this is a complete waste of time.
Mm.
Has to go above your knee or this is doing nothing. And so that was the genesis of it. I realized the brace needed to go above the knee. And then I also realized the foot position mattered too, that you need to have the foot supinated so that you can lock them in tarsal joint and then all the force is going to be in the hind foot. But also, when you supinate the foot, you externally rotate the tibia, which locks the knee. You can't lock your knee into full extension unless your tibia externally rotates via the screw home mechanism. So that's where the idea came from. I had a friend who was a sales rep. I told him about it, and he goes, I know the guy that can help us make this come to reality. So the three of us formed a company called IQ Medical, Ricky Heath and John Moore and I. And then we brought the brace to market. It was really a learning experience for all three of us. It, like anything, took much longer than we thought and cost a lot more money than we thought it would. But it's pretty amazing to see something that you dreamed up in your head come to life into a real thing.
Did you use it on yourself and did you get back running?
So it took us about 5 years. It really took about 5 years to get it actually in production. I kept running though.
So did you end up being one of your own patients testing this out on yourself?
Oh yeah, I was testing all the sort of different versions of it coming up on myself for sure. I have a size 14 shoe, so it's really pushing the limits on the size of the brace, but I was able to try them out as we were going through different ideations of it.
And this is what I was talking about when I did the introduction with you, where you've had a very successful podiatry career. You've been on so many boards and associations and held so many different positions. You're going to be the next president of the APMA. You've done all this volunteer work overseas. You've invented the Aquinas Brace. With all that going on, what's next? You must have other things in the pipeline that you're going, I've got more to do.
My favorite thing that I do in podiatry is being a residency director. I love it. We have 12 residents at our program, so we have four per year, or it's a 3-year residency. And I become really close to the residents. We have a great program, and I just love teaching. I love watching the residents develop. We just had a new group start a week ago. So watching them develop from July 1st when they start over 3 years to the June 30th of their third year when they graduate, and I send them out. We always have our graduation party in kind of mid-June. And it's a kind of a running joke at our residency program that I cannot get through my speech at their graduation party without getting very emotional because they become like my kids. And
Yeah.
I'm so close to them and I'm so proud of them. And I can see what they have to offer to not only their patients, but the profession also going forward. And it's really something that I love doing. And I feel honored to be able to teach them.
So when somebody does podiatry in the United States, they go to podiatry school, they finna get their degree. They've done an undergraduate degree beforehand, haven't they? Then they
Yeah.
go to podiatry school. If somebody doesn't do residency, they can't work as a podiatrist.
Right. They can't get licensed in the States any longer without doing a residency.
Yeah. So they do the podiatry school. Are there enough positions around the country, residencies for everybody who graduates?
Yes. There are actually more residency spots now than students.
Okay, that's good. Because I'd heard years ago that sometimes it was a struggle. People would finish and then it was difficult to try and find a residency.
Yeah. I mean, when I was going through it, that was the case.
Yeah. And I take it all residencies are not equal. Some have
Well,
a better reputation.
they're all standardized. They're all 3-year residencies and they're all
Yeah.
held accountable to the same standards by our governing organization, the Council on Podiatric Medical Education. With that being said, yes, there are some residency programs that are the leading residency programs for sure.
So you have 12 residency spots in your program. So there would be a lot of podiatrists, if they really want to work with you, do they contact you while they're in podiatry school and start reaching out that way? How do you actually select who does a
Yeah.
residency?
So in the US, the students during their 4th year rotate through different hospitals. Most of the time they're for 1 month rotations. Some are for 3 month rotations. And it's a little bit of a getting to know each other. It's also part of their educational experience. So they're getting that practical experience and getting out of just the book experience from learning. So we have probably around 50 to 60 students through the year coming through our residency program as externs, somewhere between 4 or so a month. And then the interviews for residency are always in January, mid-January. And then you rank the students how you like them, and they rank the residency programs how they like them. And then there's a match that comes out in mid-May, and then you find out who you match with.
Okay, so it's not your decision on who actually gets the position. So it doesn't come down to anyone's personal preference. It's an external body that puts them all together.
Well, it's not so much an external body. It's just you rank your top students and the students rank their top programs. If you pick student A number one and student A picks your residency number one, then you're going to match and they're going to be one of your residents.
It's good to get some insight on how that process actually works. And it's also good knowing there's more residency spots than there are students graduating.
Yeah. And while they're here for a month, we get to know them, they get to know us. And then the interviews are part of the mix too. But really, while they're rotating is probably the most important part of it. Because I've had students who were number one in their class who wanted to do our residency, but it wasn't necessarily a good fit from a culture standpoint. We are very protective of our culture. And sometimes maybe the top students aren't the best fit. I've also had students who were number one in their class who are a great fit, who have been residents at our program too. But we are very protective of the culture. So we want to look at the prospective resident from a global standpoint and looking at them in the entirety of how they fit in the program.
I think that's a fantastic point that anyone listening to this, even when you're just employing a team member, is you've got to make sure they fit the culture of your business. Doesn't matter how qualified they are. Doesn't matter how many other boxes they tick. If they don't fit, it's always going to be difficult long term to make it work.
Absolutely. I talk to other residency directors and they talk about their challenges with residents. I never really have any issues with our residents. I think part of that is the culture we've established, and part of it is I have two chief residents that are in their third year, the third year residents, two of them are chiefs. I rely really heavily on them. We work very closely. And then I have a program coordinator. Her name's Carrie. And the four of us run the program together and we all work together. But everybody is part of it though. We're so it would be 12 plus the program coordinator plus me. And we have a podiatrist who runs a clinic. So the 15 of us are all working together. Plus we have about 50 podiatrists who are attending surgeons who our residents work with. So we have a really big group of people that we work with, but our residents, nothing really ever escalates to my level where I've got to intervene. They all work hard. They all come as willing, eager learners. And I always ask the new residents the same thing, to leave the residency program better than they found it.
Have you had anyone that's done the residency that they've got halfway through it and you just went, this is not working out? We made a mistake. You're not the right fit.
Nope. It's interesting. I'm known for not being a big fan of fellowships. I think fellowships in the United States, it needs to be reined in. That's another year after training, after residency program we're doing. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of them have become almost like a fourth year of residency, and fellowships really should be for really specific specialized training, like if you want to do diabetic limb salvage or you want to do pediatrics or whatever. But I tell our residents, if you think you need a fellowship because you didn't get adequate surgical training while you were at our residency program, that is my fault. I failed you. And so in the case that you brought up, that would have been my responsibility, not the problem of the resident.
So before we wrap up, is there anything else you would like to talk about?
Well, I think one of the other things you asked me about, what excites me now, is I invented a surgical a kit for Aquinas surgery for the Bauman. And I started a company with three of my sons. So that's been really fun working with my sons. One of my sons also has a brace company where he sells AFOs and sells the Aquinas Brace that I invented. But starting this company with my sons and working with family has been really fun. Some of my most cherished memories were working with my father-in-law when he was still alive and practicing, even if he was just doing routine care, just hanging out in the office with him and talking shop over dinner, and it was fun. But I'm really excited about the profession. It's been really great to me, and that's why I feel a responsibility to pay it forward and to try to see that it's in a better place than when I entered it. And so that's why I put so much effort into it. I've been in charge of the student recruitment, which we talked about last time, which is another big I'm working on right now. I'm really excited about that. And we're looking at expanding that into a branding campaign for the entire profession and getting all the key stakeholders in podiatry in the United States involved in that. And it's interesting because osteopathic medicine did that about 15 years ago, and it had a really significant impact on osteopathic medicine. I think we can have the same impact on podiatry with a national branding campaign where we just elevate the awareness of podiatry so people understand what we do and understand it as a potential career for people who are in high school or undergraduate trying to figure out what they want to get into. And it's interesting. We work at our residencies at a big teaching hospital, and still there are residents in general surgery or neurosurgery who don't really understand what we as podiatrists do. And our residents are interacting with them and say, oh yeah, we can work on that and trying to save that limb from being amputated. And they're like, wow, you guys really do that?
And that doesn't surprise me, because nearly anyone I ever talk to when I tell them I was a podiatrist, and you just explain what you do, and they go, oh, I didn't know you did that. That sounds really interesting.
Sure. And I do all parts of podiatry, and I like all of it. I'm not above trimming a 90-year-old lady's toenails. I mean, if I can trim a 90-year-old lady's toenails and a corn on her little toe, and she walks out of my office and feels immediately better, that's an honor for me to be able to help somebody like that. And I take that very seriously.
Okay. Well, on that note, Patrick, I want to thank you for coming back on the Podiatry Legends podcast, sharing part of your story. It's going to be a smidgen of what you've done. You have done so much. It's been a pleasure having you on here. So thank you very much.
It's been awesome having a conversation with you. You're such a great interviewer. Thank you for having me on.
Well, thank you. I'm going to take that as a big compliment. Thank you very much.
You're really good.
Well, I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Dr. Patrick DeHeer as much as I did. His passion for podiatry, his commitment to teaching and the impact he's made both locally and globally is nothing short of inspiring. And it's a great reminder of the difference we can make in people's lives, whether we're treating elite athletes, whether you're a pediatric surgeon doing surgery, or simply helping someone walk pain-free again. It is amazing what this profession can do. If you took something valuable from today's episode, please share it with a podiatry colleague. Share it with friends, because you don't have to be a podiatrist to listen to this episode. And like I said earlier on, consider leaving a review and don't forget to actually subscribe. So, as I always say, that's it for me this week. I want you to look after yourself, look after your family, and I will talk to you next week. Bye for now.